Hi there, this is Kari Jones and I'm going to be reading today chapters 9 and 10 of Out of Season, which is an Orca Currents book that came out a few years ago. And here we are, chapter 9. The next morning, 2 Coast Guard boats arrived at our dock before the sun rises. Dad and Saul step out onto one boat. I bend down to my kayak. "No way, Maya," Dad says. I pick up my life jacket and paddle and I drag my kayak into the water. "Maya," says Dad, "no way, you stay here. It's going to be dangerous out there." "Like yesterday?" I ask. "Like yesterday. Yesterday when I rescued you?" He opens his mouth and closes it again. "She's right," says Saul. "You keep out of this," says Dad. "Maya, you are a 14-year-old girl and they are mean and dangerous men." "He's right," says Saul, which is not at all helpful. "I'll stay out of the way, I promise. I'll paddle along the shore like usual, and then I'll land and watch from there." Dad shakes his head. "I'll take my cell phone and my radio." He shakes his head again. Mom comes down to the dock with a thermos in her hand. Once she hears both of us, she says, "Have these men ever seen you, Maya?" "No." "Then they'll think you're just another kayaker. Let her go, Jerry." Saul and I stare at her. Is this my mom speaking? She hands the thermos to Dad. "I thought about what you did yesterday, Maya. It was brave," she says. Dad steps off the boat and pulls her away. They argue. I try not to listen. I'm going, whether Dad wants me to or not. I have a promise to keep to Gertrude and Oscar and Lily. But I want Dad to say I can come. I bite at my fingernails as I wait. When Dad comes back, he says, "Stay out of the way? Promise?" "Yes, that's a promise I can keep." The Coast Guard boats roar off into the bay. I secure my cell phone in my pocket and my radio on the shoulder strap of my life jacket. "Thanks, Mom," I say as I slip the boat into the water. "Remember your promise," she says. "I will." The Coast Guard boats disappear around the headland, and I'm alone in the bay. It's like any other morning. The sun hasn't risen above the horizon, but there is light. I can see the silhouettes of the hills around me. I paddle to the center of Riley Bay and search the water for the sea otters. It's hard to see in the dim light. I hear splashing to my left and head towards the sound. Sea otters ignore me as I paddle up to them. They play several feet away. I settle in to watch them. I place my paddle across my cockpit and lean into it. My radio cackles, and Dad's voice says, "You promised to stay out of the way, Maya." I look around. The boats are well hidden under the trees. I can barely make out their shapes. With all the rocks and tiny islands in this bay, the poachers will never notice them. The sea otters splash and twist in the water. I long to stay with them, but I did promise, so I paddle to shore and climb out of the boat. I hide it and find a tree to crouch behind. As the sun rises, I stare through my binoculars. Like everyone else, I'm waiting for the poachers. When it's bright enough, I turn my binoculars to look at Dad and Saul on the Coast Guard boat. They seem nervous. Both of them are looking out into the bay. They are both more still than usual. I watch them as much as I watch the bay. When the sun's fully up, the Coast Guard boat slips out from under the trees and slowly motors to me. Dad calls out, "They're not coming, Maya. Not now that the sun's up. It was a good plan. It's too bad it didn't work." He shrugs. It's all over now. "Go home now. Mom will be worried," is all he says. The Coast Guard's boats leave, and I'm alone in the cove. I paddle out to the sea otters, tears pouring down my cheeks. Everything has backfired. We didn't catch the poachers, and now everyone in town knows about the sea otters. What have I done? The sun breaks over the treetops. Gertrude is eating a sea urchin. She cracks its shell and rolls over to clear the shell bits out of her fur, then nibbles on the flesh inside. Oscar and Lily hang out nearby. My tears have dried. Watching the sea otters has that effect. I'm about to head home before Dad or Mom regret letting me come out here when I hear an engine. It's not unusual, so I don't pay attention. Then the sound changes. I recognize the boat motoring into the bay. It's the poachers. Chapter 10. Without thinking, I put my paddle in the water and sprint for shore. The poachers must have seen me. I was sitting right in the middle of the bay, far from any rock or island. My thoughts spin about. Are they following me? What will they do when they catch me? Should I radio for help? My mouth is dry and my breath is sharp. My arms push the paddle faster and the boat glides through the calm water. When I'm almost at shore, I risk a glance over my shoulder. They've stopped in the bay. They're not paying attention to me at all. I let the kayak slow. I take a deep breath to clear my mind. Of course they haven't followed me. Why would they? As far as they know, I'm a kayaker out for a morning paddle. I drift closer to land. I'm shaking. I need to get to shore. Then an idea hits me. I paddle around the headland as if I was passing through. When I can't see the poachers anymore, I pull my kayak up to shore and walk to the other side of the headland where I can see the poachers. I search for a place to hide. I push aside a pine branch and crawl into the space behind it. It's like a nest. I'm surrounded by tree branches and small shrubs. I push away twigs and branches on the ground to smooth out a place to sit. I can see the poachers, I can see the poachers' boat clearly through the branches. They have anchored in the middle of the bay, right where the sea otters hang out. A sea otter watches them from the far side of the kelp bed. I bite my lip, then whisper a message. Stay away from them, stay away. There are 3 men on board. One looks familiar. Even though it's a small bay, they are too far away for me to be sure of their faces. I fumble for my binoculars, but remember they're in the kayak. 2 of the men are wearing dry suits and oxygen tanks. The other one stands near the motor. He keeps checking the water. The men in dry suits have long metal instruments that look like rakes in one hand and a mesh harvest bag on the other. They step to the edge of their boat and dive overboard. I can hardly breathe. This is the worst thing that could happen. The poachers are hunting sea urchins. The sea otters are nearby, and they don't know how dangerous these men are. If I get into my kayak and paddled out to the poachers, what would I do? I remember what happened to Dad. A wave of weakness travels down my legs at the thought. I'm not brave enough to go out there on my own. I'm helpless, crouching here under the trees. I can't see the sea otters clearly, but I can see when they roll over and their flippers splash. One moves closer to the divers. Oh no! I hold my breath until the sea otter swims away. I can't believe I'm watching this, and there's nothing I can do. Maybe there is something I can do. I have a cell phone with me. I can take pictures. They won't be great, but they will be something. I shuffle closer to the water's edge. I'm still behind branches, but I can see more clearly. It's hard to get good photos with a cell phone, especially when the boat's moving on the water. I snap 3 of the men in the boat, but his back is turned. Turn, turn, I whisper. One of the divers surfaces. I point my phone at him and wait. He raises a bag heavy with sea urchins. I wait until the right moment, then click. I take another picture, then another. Eventually the man in the boat turns and I take a picture of his face. After the diver hands over his bag, he dives back down. I wait for the next diver to surface. The sun is high now. It sparkles off the water. It's hard to see. That must be why I don't see the diver coming towards me until he's almost at the shore. Something catches my eye close to shore. Bubbles. My brain can't make sense of it. Bubbles? Then I understand. The bubbles mean someone is swimming underneath with an air tank. One of the poachers is heading to shore. How does he know I'm here? Did he see the sunlight glint off my cell phone? I put my hand over my mouth to stop myself from crying out. I back into the undergrowth. There's no time to run. He's almost at the shore. The diver steps out of the water onto the sand right next to where I'm hidden. I hold my breath, but I'm sure he'll hear my heart thump or see me trembling. I hold onto a branch to steady myself. The picture of Dad falling out of his boat is clear in my mind. The poacher stands on the shore. He lays his rake and bag on the sand. He pulls off his air tank, tears off his hood and unzips his dry suit. He kicks off his flippers and turns towards me. "Ah," I say as I bite into my hand. His eyebrows crease, but he's still glancing about. He looks for me, but doesn't know where I am. I don't breathe. He shakes out his hair and looks around again. The man's eyes find what they're looking for. He thumps right towards me. I have to take a breath. I move my hand and open my mouth to breathe in. I want to gulp the air, but all I do is take a couple of quiet breaths, then clamp my hand over my mouth again. He walks past. Can he see me from behind? I don't dare look. I hear nothing for a moment. Then the sound I hear next almost makes me laugh in the relief. The man has come ashore to take a pee. He hasn't seen me. I breathe again, but I don't move my hand. He's still nearby. When he finishes peeing, he walks back to his air tank. He zips up his suit and struggles into his tank and flippers. He grabs his bag and rake and walks back to the water. The bubbles move away from shore. I flop onto the ground. My hands shake. I put my cell phone in my pocket so that no one will see the glint of the sun off it. When I feel calm enough, I walk back to my kayak. I make it home in record time. All I want to do is get away from those men. And that's the end of chapter 10. I just remembered that when I wrote this book was just when cell phones with cameras in them were coming out. So this book is a few years old and our cameras have become a lot more sophisticated since then. And once again, that was chapters 9 and 10 of Out of Season, which is an Orca Currents book.